Hello everyone, I hope you're all well and managing to stay as active as you can through lockdown. We wanted to put together some videos for you to do whilst you're at home. So obviously you can either do the activities here, or here. Ideally for these skills you need a stick and a ball, but try and be as creative as you can. It doesn't necessarily have to be a hockey ball, it can be a tennis ball or something that you've got at home. If you haven't got a stick, try and be creative. Some of the stuff we do with cones, just make sure that you use tins of beans, sticks, logs, anything that you can do to kind of weave in and out of them to make sure that you're practicing properly. So before these sessions, make sure you've warmed up, so make sure you've done a good pulse raiser, make sure you've done some stretches to make sure that you're ready to perform. And then we're going to get on some of the exercises. So for these exercises, I've called in a special guest. Many of you know her. Welcome, Miss Hunt.
Hello.
So the first kind of exercise we're going to do, you want to have your kind of feet a stick's width apart, maybe slightly narrower, and we're just going to look at our left to right here. So again, shoulders width apart, all in front of us, and then just going from left to right, just outside the stick as best we can. Miss Hunt, do you want to talk about the grip on the stick?
Yes, like I've said to a lot of you before, you want to imagine that you've got a little bird sat on your elbow. So as I'm moving the ball, my hands are going to be away from my body, and I'm moving the ball across so that I can see the ball in front of my feet at all times. My left hand is doing the movement, so my left hand is the one that's moving the stick, and my right hand is simply guiding it as I move the ball across. My right hand is nice and loose, and it's my left hand that's doing the work.
So here we don't want to go too fast. Obviously the more you get used to it, the faster you can go. So make sure we keep it under control. Think about that grip, having it out in front of us. And then obviously as we get more used to it, we can go a little bit quicker. Give that a try. Step onto that. So obviously we've looked to make sure our shoulders width apart. We've got that grip on the stick out in front of us as well. And obviously at the moment we've been focusing on the ball and where it's going in terms of the outside of our feet. Now we want to make sure, obviously in hockey, you want to make sure we've got our head up looking for what we want to do, if we need to beat an opponent or can find a pass. So now we want to do it with our head up. So once we've got it nice and comfortable here, we want to make sure we can look up, okay, and then move the ball around. We're going to look at how we can lift the ball, so these are what we call 3D skills.
So to begin with, we're just going to practice lifting the ball into the air, and for this, what you can start by doing is just giving the ball a slight little tap to roll it back, and then we're going to try and get underneath the ball so that we lift it up into the air. What's really important when we're doing this is that we bend our knees and get our hands nice and low. As you can see, when I pull the ball back, I've got my stick facing up, but then as I go to lift it, I want to imagine that I'm going to flip a pancake. So I'm opening up my stick face, moving the ball back, getting my knees and my hands nice and low, and I'm going to lift the ball. Once you've got it in the air, you can see how long you can try and control it. If you can try and move it in the air as well, it's a little extra progression, and that's really good. So getting those hands and those knees nice and low under the ball and controlling it whilst it's in the air.
Another thing to think about here is your footwork. So what we want to do is, if we're moving it back into us, if we don't move our feet, then it just stays there. But if we can move it back and then move our body space to then keep it in the air as well. Remember, we want to keep it below our knees, ideally. Okay, otherwise it's not going to be very safe, so we can start moving with it a little bit lower, then that's going to be a lot more beneficial when we're trying to dribble past defenders. Moving it on slightly, so once you've got used to that, so just being here, pulling it back and then lifting it up, trying to balance it as well. You can move it so we've got a bit of an obstacle to use. Again, if you don't have a stick, just use something else, try and be a little bit creative in terms of what you're trying to take on. This time, we're going to try and move the ball back and then try and lift it over the stick. So again, if we're on this side here, we're lifting it back and then over the stick that way. And if we're on the left-hand side of it, we're just here to lift the stick over.
Again, making sure that you keep it below knee height, so that if you're doing this in a game or against an opponent, it's not going to be dangerous and you're not going to get blown up for a foul.
So once we've kind of moved it back and then across, we're now going to look at how we can kind of do it on the move as well. So rather than shifting it backwards, we might try and do it whilst we're on the run, so shifting it from one side and then lifting it over the other. Okay, or if we're this side as well, we can try and be here to try and lift it over this way. It's just about shifting the ball across and using the kind of pace on the ball to try and lift it over that stick, and then we can go again. What you might do is, whilst you're on the move, you might move it back into your own space, so moving it here, back and then across. Okay, and again, similar to here, if we're moving it on the forehand, we're here to then go over the stick as well. Just a few alternative ways that you can try and explore with it. So last progression with this in terms of how we can move the ball from left to right, and then a little 3D progression as well, is you can get almost like a ladder going. Again, you don't need to use sticks, just try and be creative with what you're lifting it over. Obviously with all this kind of stuff, with lifting a ball in the air, just make sure it's nice and safe at home. So again, you can, obviously we're on an AstroTurf here, but you might be doing it in your living room or your garden, just be careful where you're doing it. So when we come to the sticks this time, we're going to try and lift it up. So lift the ball in the air, like we've done before. So lift, and then as we get over, okay, here, in one motion, we're trying to obviously move it left, okay, so we're trying to beat a defender there, or once we've got over here, trying to lift it over, and then right towards this way. So just trying to combine those two skills together. So again, still thinking about our grip on the stick. Okay, so obviously really, really important. And like we've talked about before, just that change in pace, change in direction to try and beat the defender. Next drill is to do with your kind of reaction time, but also to get your head up whilst you're dribbling as well. So try and set up either, as I say, cones or objects that you can identify that are different from each other. So here we've got obviously 4 different coloured cones. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call out a coloured cone for Miss Hunt, and then she's going to dribble to that, touch it with the ball or her stick, and then return to the middle. Okay. Orange. Green. Green. Yellow. White. And done there. So it's up to you, completely up to you how you do this. You could do kind of 30 seconds on, 10 seconds off. Completely up to you what you do. Obviously, it requires someone to kind of give you instructions in terms of what colour to choose. But again, just give it a go, challenge yourself and see how long you can do it for. Okay, so for this challenge, we're looking at the way you carry the ball. So I want to make sure you've got a good ball carry position. So we talked about the grip before. We'll make sure they've got those arms out in front of us. This is all about your footwork. So it's about how we work our feet whilst we're carrying the ball. Obviously, we're lucky enough to have the line that we're using now, but you can set up a corridor of cones like this, or bean tins, or whatever we said before. Try and be nice and creative with it. The whole idea is you've got to try and keep the ball on the line or through the corridor, and then move your feet either side. So it should look a little bit like this. Okay, so obviously try that a few times and make sure you get used to it. Obviously it's really good for your feet position. It'll be a little bit awkward at times, but it's obviously really good for the way we carry the ball. Next variation, you're just gonna have your toes facing forwards. You're gonna try and stay on the line this time, and then make sure you work the ball. So it should look like this. With these kind of like line and slalom drills, we're going to look at kind of mixing it all together, trying to keep it on the forehand or trying to mix it up with the backhand as well. So it should look like this. A little bit of a defensive focus now, so we're going to look at our jab tackle, which can be really useful in games. What's going to happen here is going to set up, again, similar to when we were dribbling around to the different colours, you're going to set up 3 different stations or colours that are different from each other. You can place objects on them, doesn't have to be a ball, can be anything that you're going to jab off. To start off with, I'm just going to call the colours, and Miss Hunt is going to, again, jab towards, not knock anything off, and then as we progress, she can then start to try and knock off the balls or the objects that are going to be on the cone. Here we go. Yellow. Green. Yellow. Orange.
So then we're just looking at the jab tackle, and some key things to think about when we're doing that is a bit like so for the grip, what we talked about before when we were lifting the ball, is that frying of a pancake grip. So my stick's going to be the flat sides of me facing up, and what I want to imagine is as I'm approaching the cone, I want to have my stick in kind of this position so I'm ready to jab, I can see what's going on. And then I want you to imagine a lizard's tongue action, that's kind of the motion of the stick. So I'm not just going in and then leaving my stick there, I'm going in and then coming back out. And we can do this with either 1 or 2 hands, depending on whatever you feel comfortable doing. So I'm going to step and jab, and then as I'm stepping back, I'm bringing my stick in. So that as the stick comes back, I'm then ready to move again, rather than just dangling it around here. So it's a short, sharp, jabbing motion.
Of course, just to demonstrate that technique, we're now going to move on. So rather than just touching it, it's just going to now try and knock the balls off the coat. Okay, here we go. Green, orange, yellow. Nice. So if you're struggling to do any of these exercises, then other things to do is think about what you can do in terms of hockey specific fitness. So something that you can look at is obviously getting out for runs and things like that, keep it nice and active, cycling. Something that is very, very specific to invasion games, so your hockey, your football, rugby, etc. Is a little bit of interval training. So obviously in hockey you do a mixture of walking, jogging and sprinting. So again, it might be worth incorporating that into your kind of fitness regime to keep you nice and active. Obviously think about doing core exercises as well, that's always really important, but just anything that you can do to keep yourself active, then please make sure you're doing it. I hope you enjoy the exercises. Thank you to Miss Hunt for joining us as well. If you've got any questions or you need any more advice or ideas, then please make sure you get in contact with any of the PE team and we'll be more than happy to help you. I hope you enjoy the rest of lockdown. Please make sure you stay active and do let us know how you get on.